After 7 games last season, Liverpool were sat happily in second, they had 15 points and they conceded 6 goals. That was good. This season, it's not going very well. And in fact, they've already drawn 4 games, conceded 9, and they're sat in 9th position with only 10 points. It's bad. So what's going wrong? This is a Liverpool team that used to dominate people. Where has the intensity gone? This is one of the key things. Now, they're conceding a lot of goals from this left-hand side of the pitch. That is where a lot of teams are scoring from them, whether it's wide areas here, or it's at least definitely this left-hand side of the pitch when the strikers are getting through on goal, scoring from these sorts of areas. Now you'll notice that this is exactly where Alexander-Arnold plays, and also where the right centre-back has changed quite a lot this season. So you've had Joe Gomez playing there, not doing very well. Nat Phillips has played there, only lasted a game. But the problems are numerous, and they are to do with individual errors being punished regularly by their opponents, but also there are big structural issues in the tactical part of the team, and it all stems from the front end of the pitch. So in Pep Linder's book, Liverpool's assistant manager, he says that Liverpool's identity is their intensity, but they are not as intense this season by miles. Last season, at the end of the season, they had made more pressures in the final third than any team by miles. This season, they are like mid-table. It's not good. The numbers are right on the screen in front of you. So they've dropped off a lot at pressuring in the final third, which is then allowing teams to have more of the ball and be able to get at them, and then they're exposing the mistakes that they've made deeper on. Because what you have normally with Liverpool is this front 3, then you get your wide fullbacks overlap and get up here. So the left back always gets up high and leaves a big gap between the centre-back and the left-back. Alexander-Arnold traditionally has gone up here like this, left a big gap here. And in the past what's happened is Jordan Henderson has been right side and he's come over to block any balls that are then played into here by like an opponent striker getting into this bait, or whether it's like a left winger or something get into these positions. So what you have is the space is left, but Henderson's covered it, and then someone else, with Wijnaldum in the past, would come over here and block the left side. So that way they get their front 5 here and a very functional midfield. But it's changed recently, it's changed a lot. So what has been happening this season is lots of injuries to key players, including Jordan Henderson's been missing, so you've had Harvey Elliott's been in here. Now he doesn't do that quite so much. Thiago is a very pretty player to watch, he's lovely, doesn't really cover that either. So teams can get in behind this when they lose the ball higher up, and because they're not winning the ball in the final third as much, they're then just leaving these gaps exposed. So without that intensity higher at the pitch, they're leaving a big problem for themselves. But the things that keep happening to them are Alexander-Arnold being caught out of position and teams isolating themselves 1v1 with him in dangerous situations. Like Fulham did it and Brighton did it in the game that they drew 3-3. So for example, the first goal that Brighton scored in this game, the structural issues at play. The right back has the ball over here. Now, teams clearly focus on the left side. This is nothing new. Liverpool have dealt with this for a long time. They've always had teams focusing on their left, or sometimes their right towards Andy Robertson when he's playing, but it's generally the left here. Now, Alexander-Arnold's positioning is weird. So what you'd think from a right back in this sort of position when you're trying to defend, you'd keep your general shape like a back 4 like that. So you've got Fabinho anchoring it, a bit of a triangle here, and that's what you want. You want that sort of shape. But what Alexander-Arnold does is come inside the pitch into this sort of central space here, and there's a knock-on effect behind him, because if Alexander-Arnold is here, he is defending this space, and Joel Matip is defending this space, and Van Dijk is defending this space. They've all got a job. This is what they look after. These parts of the pitches, the pitch, you know what I mean. Over here, this is what he looks after. Now, if Alexander-Arnold is not there, if he's instead here, which he keeps doing, moving into midfield like an inverted fullback now, it means that Matip is certainly having to cover all of this behind him. So if there are runners getting in behind here, he's got to cover all that because he's out of position. If you have a left wing back, like Brighton did, doing this as well, you have an overload against the centre back. So what teams tend to do when they're playing, leaving this space here, is play a back 3. So Matip would be here, Van Dijk would be here, and then your third centre back would be here. Then you've got coverage of all the bits you need. Everything's covered, so you can allow the wing backs to get higher up the pitch, or come inside if you want, like Chelsea were doing under Tuchel recently. That's the kind of thing you can do. But they're not, they're playing a back 4. So Van Dijk staying in his position over here, Matip's then coming over to try and cover more of the pitch, and it's creating a massive gap between this left centre-back and the right centre-back, whether that's Matip or whether it's Joe Gomez or whoever. I'll show you some examples in a bit. So this is the problem, the big gap here because of Alexander-Arnold's positioning, whether he's caught up here or up here. It's the same on the left side. I'm not trying to pick on Alexander-Arnold particularly. Now, so that's one thing structurally. The other thing that keeps happening is that teams are putting passes through this gap between the centre-back and the right back. If they're in a flap 4 defending, Teams keep finding a way to get the ball between these two players because there's always a gap between them. The other thing they keep doing is that there's a runner here, they're over here. A lot of passes are going on the outside of Alexander-Arnold. Here are the two most common passes that Liverpool are conceding big chances to, or big attacking threat things to. On the outside of Alexander-Arnold, who then doesn't defend it very well, he doesn't turn enough or get over across. It's not always his fault, but as he does this, a striker runs in between the gap because he's playing slightly further forward, Matip's covering more. As he makes that run in between them, that leaves the space between Matip and Van Dijk, and by the time the team gets to this area here, they're often able to get someone else in the middle, and there's a big gap, and they're able to score from as Liverpool try and panic and get back in. You see Fabinho tries to get back to try and help them out. So there's a few really clear issues at play, particularly with Alexander-Arnold, but Van Dijk is making loads and loads and loads of mistakes, and this is the thing, they're making lots of errors and they're being punished for it, and because they're not preventing things higher up the pitch, they're getting far more to deal with up here. Now the first goal that Brighton score in the 3-3 draw is, I think, them focusing on targeting on Alexander-Arnold, as other examples I've got will show. So if we have these players up here, the ball is over in this situation, we'll put them more on his back four. His positioning's here, the ball comes over, it's fired over here, Alexander-Arnold puts it on his chest into the air, Danny Welbeck comes across, knows he'll win the ball, and he does. The ball gets knocked over here. Now, Trossard at this point has made a run from left wing back to kind of underlap, so he's between the centre backs. And then the left-sided midfielder, I think it's Caicedo maybe, I'm not sure, he comes over and overlaps. So Welbeck's here, centre back comes over, and he's now into here. And you can see the problem, there's a big gap here, and Matip can't come across because he'll leave this guy in the zone. So this is what happens. He nicks the ball, and then goes and makes an overlapping run here to get on the outside, because they've got all the space to cover, Matip's in trouble, he doesn't know what to do. Welbeck gets to here, and this is the next thing that they keep doing, is conceding from 1-2, from a little bit of movement. They're not getting out fast enough to get in line to catch teams offside like they used to. So if they're like this, he's here now here, Trossard's in the middle, and then Welbeck plays a ball backwards to another striker who's joined in. So this is a bit what they're like. It's not perfect this, but this is what happens. So the overlapping run from Welbeck, having won the ball over here, he's now going to ping it to a player here. So players are going to push out, but they don't do it fast enough. Matip doesn't do it fast enough. And so what then happens is that this guy can just thread in, he's about here, just hits a first time ball from Welbeck to this guy, puts it through first time, and they catch Matip off balance. Trossard finishes. It's a really good hit to make it 1-0, but it's focused from this guy knowing that he can always look for a ball here because they're likely to win the ball against Alexander-Arnold. Lots of teams do it. Let me show you some of the teams who have done it. Like the first goal Liverpool conceded this season, which was against Fulham. Now this was not all based on the left-hand side, they built play on the right, but then you saw Alexander Mitrovic, big lad, make sure he is 1v1 with Alexander-Arnold at the back post to score the header. That's deliberate, done that on purpose against Alexander-Arnold, knowing he won't be able to defend that as well as others. Here's the second goal they score, which is a penalty. I'm saying like that all the chances people create is on this left side. This is what happens, it's always this situation here. Notice the gap between Van Dijk and the left back and the right back, and the other centre back's not here, he's been caught out up the pitch. So this is a mistake that's here. Ball comes over the top to Mitrovic, he runs through, Arnold tries to get back, and Van Dijk makes a clumsy challenge and takes him down. One of the things that Van Dijk's been bad at is he's lacking that intensity that made him so good in the past. Like he'd be straight onto you and you wouldn't be able to get past him. He feels beatable this season. He makes mistakes like this as a result of having to cover for the big spaces that Liverpool are leaving. Here's a goal that Crystal Palace score. It starts with Liverpool not pressing well enough in the final third to win the ball back. The goalkeeper targets Eze on this left side, because the most likely place you'll win the ball with an out ball is this left side. He beats Alexander-Arnold. Fabinho comes across and he skips past him. And then you see the distance again between the centre backs and the rest of the team. They don't have Jordan Henderson coming here to block the gap, to block this bit here. That's where he would be. Fabinho's been caught out because he doesn't have that extra player. That's Harvey Elliott there, who's out of position higher up. Then Eze just threads it through on the outside of the two centre backs, and they've got so much space to cover, they can't do it, and he beats the offside trap to score. Here's another one against Man U. This is the 1-2 that we're talking about, they keep conceding, and it's to do with the gap between the centre backs that is created by trying to cover for Alexander-Arnold. Here's Joe Gomez, here is Van Dijk. That is too big a gap. Van Dijk should probably be here, because Robertson's got this bit covered. That's where he should be. It's a Van Dijk error, I think, first of all. But this is what happens. The ball comes in, it's obvious it's going to go through this gap. There's no one in midfield to block the gap. You should have a triangle here. One player should be here to block that, or Alexander-Arnold should step across to block it. You should know already. Ball's threaded through. Malacia gets in behind, gets into the box, pulls it back for Sancho, and because there's too much of a gap, Liverpool panic trying to get back into position. and Sancho just slots it in amongst the chaos. That's how that happens. It's structural issues again. Again, left side. Here is the gap. Centre backs, fine. Left back, fine. The right back, totally caught out because no one is covering this position. Now, this is an error by Jordan Henderson because the ball's not long and takes a heavy touch. That's where it gets to Sancho here. But the point is that Rashford can run into this space here because there's no one covering in this area. So if you play a high-risk game, pushing high up the pitch, that's what happens. The risk is that you get caught in transition and you can get through it. That's what happens. Here's another goal to score. This is an example of the 1-2 they keep conceding. This is the centre-back and the other centre-back. Too big of a gap. Fabinho is trying to fill in here. That's what he's doing. He does this quite a lot, but then that means he's not in position to stop the shot. So if you've got 3 midfielders, you want one of them to be round about. Well, Henderson's certainly probably closer, but Fabinho's probably closer because he's filling in for Van Dijk, who is too slow, just kind of lethargically runs back into his position. That means that Isak is free because Fabinho leaves thinking it's getting replaced by someone else behind him. He doesn't. That ball's then threaded through easily through the gap between the centre-backs for Isak to score. That's one of the goals Newcastle score. Then Napoli score 4 against them. So sure enough, they beat Bournemouth 9-0. That's well done, whatever. But they lose 4 goals to Napoli. This is not good. And they're all, again, the left-hand side. Individual errors by Gomez. This is the tricky winger, the Georgian guy they have. I can't remember his name. I can't say it. He's really good. He's magic, this boy. Now, again, the gap is caused because there was a big gap between the full-backs. Here's the left back trying to get back. The right back's way out of the picture. So they're isolated. He holds up play till his mates can join in. And then the same thing. Centre-back is here. Other centre-back is here because the right back is in the middle of the pitch. So he's covering, like we said before on the board, he's covering the right back slot and the right centre-back slot. Fabinho's trying to slot in a little bit to try and help out. But then this means they can play the, this is Anguissa here. He plays the ball back in. Then we'll make a run between the centre-backs, which is massive, so that when the ball is threaded through, he's just cleaning behind. Look at the massive gap. Gomez looks round, what is going on here? A total mess structurally. Another goal they score is on the left-hand side. This time, the dribbly boy on the left puts the ball around one side of Alexander-Arnold and just nips past him. Too easy. Then Joe Gomez, individual error. So this is not structural, this is an error. Is then bodied out the way with him, not strong enough, not intense enough, and the ball comes in for a goal at the back post. Easy tapping. That's Napoli. Ajax, left-hand side. They build play up the left. Everyone's focusing on the left-hand side because that ball around the outside of Alexander-Arnold is too easy. Salah's not putting enough pressure on, so he can get the ball to this wing easily. Then the ball is put on the outside of Alexander-Arnold, who's too inside the pitch. He's like an inverted fullback. Runners get in between the two centre-back and the fullback, and then there's a big gap between centre-back and other centre-back. That's what keeps happening to Liverpool. Teams have worked out where the problems are. They're not as intense as they were in previous seasons, and it's meaning that all the individual errors that they're making are being punished. They're making about the same amount of shot-creating actions as they ever were, so that's around about the same as it was last season. They're doing okay with that. It's not a huge difference in terms of points or whatever. It looks bad because of how well Arsenal and Man City are doing this season, but there is something very wrong with Liverpool this season, and there are big structural issues at play which are exposing individual errors, and then you see players like Alexander-Arnold start to drop confidence and not defend as well as he can do. Good players letting themselves down a little bit, but this is the thing. Watch out for this gap in future games. This gap is bad. This gap is bad unless it's filled by someone else, and teams have worked it out and they're focusing on it, and that's how they're scoring so many goals against Liverpool. So that's what's happening so far. I think maybe you think I'm wrong, and you should tell me how wrong I am in the comments. I think Liverpool will be fine, by the way. I think they'll be fine later. Not now. Subscribe. Like the video. What else should they do? That's it, yeah. Have fun.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is where the Ralph Rangnick to Manchester United story broke, where a team of journalists have provided unrivaled coverage of Newcastle United's new ownership, and where dedicated writers cover every Premier League team no matter their place in the table. And you can try it free now for 30 days.